So there's nothing worse than seeing something really awesome and then coming out with a out of focus or blurry photo, right? So while I've seen a trend lately of some photographers taking photos specifically out of focus to give the photo a soft feeling, this is not what I'm talking about. Basically what it comes down to is you missed. And that's about the size of it. You can't change that moment, but how do we get it right the next time? I have a couple of easy tips that are going to help you get there. Hey everybody, welcome back. Thank you very much for joining me this week. I'm going to jump right into the tips so that way we're not wasting any time here. And the first one is going to be a feature that I've seen talked about a whole bunch, and I've seen lots of videos out there, and I've seen a lot of other people talk about it. But when I'm out in the field, I really don't see other photographers using it. And that's going to be back button focus on your camera. I don't know why I don't see this out in the field quite as much, but unless you're really good at adjusting where your focus point is in your frame when you're taking a photo, especially on the fly, a short press of your shutter button on your camera is going to engage your autofocus. So the purpose of back button focus is to take that function of autofocus off of your focus button or off of your shutter button and move it to a button on the back of your camera. So I have seen and have captured a lot of focus where my subject is not in focus because of this. Changing it is pretty straightforward, and I'm going to show you the Canon configuration for that, but please consult your manual for your particular camera to ensure that you have this feature enabled and how. So for the next tip is actually about a pretty cool technology that will help you as a photographer get sharper photos when you're in motion, or if you're like me, you have wobbly hands. Perhaps I should cut down on the caffeine too, but let's get to the feature. So one of the features that I utilize when I'm taking photos in handheld mode, when I'm hand holding my camera, is image stabilization. So image stabilization is a technology that's designed to reduce shake and vibration, primarily caused by hand movements when you're holding onto your camera. The nice thing about image stabilization is it will help you get clearer photos in lower light using slower shutter speeds. Some of the marketing material out there will actually talk about gaining several stops of light in some of these cases. So there's two different types of image stabilization. The first one that I'm going to talk about, which is newer, is going to be in-body image stabilization, and the other one that has been around for a little bit is lens-based image stabilization. And on Canon cameras, these do work together. I'm not sure about other manufacturers, but they do work together. So the moment that you turn on image stabilization on a Canon lens attached to a Canon camera, your in-body image stabilization, if the feature is available, will automatically get enabled. So as a warning, you really shouldn't use it when you're on a tripod, since it could give you a little bit of a soft focus, since the lens and the camera are going to be looking for motion in your image and in your frame to stabilize. So also you want to be aware that with larger lenses like my 100 to 400, they will also have different stabilization modes as well. And I'll go through those really quick. Because right on here there's a little switch that's labeled 1, 2, and 3, so it gives you 3 different modes of stabilization. Mode 1 will correct for vibrations in all directions. So it's mainly effective for shooting still subjects while you're handheld. Mode 2 is going to correct any single plane motion or vibration. So basically, if you are shooting horizontally and you're moving horizontally, it's going to help correct for any vibration or motion vertically. So if you're panning across taking a photo, it's going to correct for any motions like this. Okay, obviously this is exaggerated, but if you're in a vehicle and you're trying to take something as you drive by it, whatever, as you go along, you're going to be bouncing. That'll help correct for that up and down motion. The other thing that it'll do is if you're shooting vertically, so if you're panning up and down like this, it's going to help correct for any side-to-side motion on that horizontal plane. So mode 2 will help correct for basically the opposite of whatever plane that you're panning and shooting on. Mode 3 is basically like mode 2, but it only corrects while you're exposing. So the other two modes of image stabilization are going to be constantly correcting while you're looking around. So things are constantly going to be moving. A downside of that is it's going to run your battery down a lot faster, and it's going to keep things engaged and moving a lot longer. So what mode 3 does is when you actually expose your photo and you take your photo, when you depress your shutter, that's when the system will engage the image stabilization to make sure that your image is stable. So the first two tips are obviously camera features that you should be using, Back button focus and image stabilization are absolutely crucial in making sure that you're going to capture a non-blurry or out of focus photo. So setting them up on your camera may be a little bit different than what I've said here, so make sure that you consult your manual or look for tutorials on how those features on your camera are set up. The last tip that I have is actually kind of a simple trick that's going to help you ensure that you take your photos in such a way that you will reduce the possibility of not capturing your sharpest image. This also takes away from some other techniques where you're purposefully moving your camera to induce blur in some way, whether it be movement of a subject or a technique called intentional camera movement. Anyway, so on with the tip. So if you take photos with a shutter speed that is the inverse of your focal length, so this is a 24-70 lens on here, and if I was shooting at 50 millimeters, the inverse of that on a shutter speed will be 1/50th of a second. So this is just like the inverse method of the Sunny 16 rule that I talked about, but you're pretty much doing the same with your focal length and shutter speed. So like I said, shooting at 50 millimeters, your shutter speed would be 1/50th of a second. If you're using a longer lens and you're at, say, 200 millimeters, you would want your shutter speed to be 1/200th of a second. So it's pretty simple. Obviously, you can go up and down as you need to and experiment with it to kind of dial that in. One of the things that I do, and if light allows, is I actually double my shutter speed of the focal length. This is especially handy when I'm taking photos of birds or other wildlife to help stop any motion within the image. That also helps to make sure that my subject is perfectly still and is perfectly captured and frozen in the frame rather than having a little bit of blur that goes with it. So in those cases, if I'm using my longer lens and say I'm shooting wildlife at 300 millimeters, I would want my shutter speed to be at least 1/600th of a second in that case. So this is not a hard and fast rule, but it's something that I find that works for me. So make sure you try it out and let me know what you think. So I hope you find these tips helpful. Thank you very much for coming along with me this week. Make sure you get out there, take some great photos. Let me know how they go. Make sure to tag me on Instagram or let me know what your page is in the comments below, so that way I can check out any photos that you've taken using these tips. Like I said, I really do appreciate everybody coming along with me. Make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I keep saying it, get out, take some great photos, and I'll see you again next week. Take care.